There are 5 bounce-back players in fantasy football that I am absolutely all over at their current ADP, so let's just hop right into it. And the first player is Jonathan Taylor, going off the board as the RB5 or 6, depending on what platform, and most likely at the beginning of the second round. Now, most people, I've honestly seen him down in a lot of rankings towards RB8 or 9 because they're scared about Anthony Richardson and they're scared of his lack of receiving upside. I think that this is a guy that can absolutely lead the NFL in rushing just like he did in 2021. So first of all, let's dive into his history the past 3 seasons since 2021. So 2021, 5.5 yards per carry, 1,800 yards, 20 touchdowns, by far the RB1. Should have been Offensive Player of the Year if Cooper Kupp didn't put up the best receiver season of all time. Now, the next season, he only played 11 games, dealt with a lot of injuries, was still able to maintain 4.5 yards per carry, but it was a bit of a disappointment as a fantasy running back. And if you remember the Colts that season, they got about 4 wins. Their offensive line significantly underperformed. Even Quentin Nelson was ass, because I'm used to saying Quentin Johnston is ass. O-line was horrible. Matt Ryan was the quarterback. The offense sucked. We just wanted no part of the offense. Now, 2023, beginning of the season, he's dealing with the holdouts. He's injured. And I want to dive into his injuries because I don't think people realize he was injured all year and really wasn't healthy pretty much up until the end of the season. So in week 4, I'm going to pop it up on the screen. He rolled his ankle in week 4 in his return. Pretty sure it was his return. Week 15 had a high ankle sprain. Preseason was part of ankle pain, discomfort, back injury. Who knows? Week 12, torn thumb ligament. Dude was just injured fucking nonstop. Injured in 2022. Like, we haven't seen 2021 Jonathan Taylor because we haven't seen him healthy. Now, hopefully he can stay healthy this season. I'm not a doctor. I'm not here to predict injuries. And if you do try to predict injuries, you're going to lose your fantasy leagues. Stupid way to draft. I'm so over that. Anyway, what is my next one? So, let's take a look at his game log. So, obviously he was the RB1 in 2021. I think people forget as a rookie he was the RB6 and he didn't even start handling the load till halfway through the season. But down the stretch last season, he finally got healthy in the last couple of weeks. He was able to put up 30 carries for 188 yards and a touchdown in the Week 18 game against Houston. That's all I needed to see. That is all I needed to see just to make sure that prime Jonathan Taylor, prime healthy, absolute animal Jonathan Taylor is still there. He is still fucking there. Now, let's talk about Shane Steichen and Anthony Richardson. So, in my opinion, rushing quarterbacks, people don't like running backs that have rushing quarterbacks because they think that everything is going to be taken away from them. Sometimes that can be the case, but people are getting scared of guys like Jonathan Taylor for no reason. Anthony Richardson is going to make Jonathan Taylor so much better as a running back. He's going to spike his efficiency. He did this with Zach Moss. Now, I'll pop up some graphics of Zach Moss's game log. Zach Moss with Anthony Richardson and no Jonathan Taylor, 22 points per game. You can see it on the screen. Zach Moss with Gardner Minshew and no Jonathan Taylor, only 13 points per game. Zach Moss needed Anthony Richardson to spike his efficiency. Now, Jonathan Taylor doesn't need that, but I think it is worth throwing in there that it helps. It's not a bad thing. Now, this tweet from Jacob Gibbs that I'll pop up. The past 3 Shane Steichen seasons have all resulted in more rushing touchdowns than passing touchdowns. Absolutely going to be the case this season. There's a reason that Anthony Richardson's over-under is 7.5 rushing touchdowns and only 23 passing touchdowns, or 21 actually, 21 I think. This team is going to have more rushing touchdowns in my opinion. But you can see the splits here. The Eagles, 33%, Eagles, 39%, Colts, 43% of red zone pass percentage, some of the lowest in the NFL. And 2023 Colts, 2021 Eagles, and 2022 Eagles. That's all Shane Steichen. There's a reason Anthony Richardson had 4 rushing touchdowns in the not even 4 full games he played. Now, he will take some touchdowns from Taylor, but there's going to be plenty to go around. Jaylen Waddle. Now, I will pop up this tweet from Josh Larkey. Very good NFL content over there. Played every game in 2021 and 2022. 2021, he set the then rookie record for receptions. 2022, he led the NFL with 18 yards per reception. Almost put up 1,400 yards with Tyreek Hill on the team, putting up 1,700 yards. Like, that's nuts. Last season, he missed 3 games due to injury and left 2 others early. Still has more than 70 catches and 1,000 yards in his worst season. I'll pop up another tweet from PPR Fantasy Tips. How many wide receivers in 2022 had a 1,000-yard season, yet it was their worst season yet? Jaylen Waddle. At the wide receiver 22, I mean, there's like 5 guys that are drafted ahead of Jaylen Waddle that I look at, I'm like, I would rather have Jaylen Waddle. But what people don't want to talk about is how injured Jaylen Waddle was last season. Now, it was a very down season, which is why he's in this bounce-back video. Week 2, he got a concussion. Week 8, he got hurt with back soreness. Week 11, knee soreness. Week 15, bruised chest. Week 16, high ankle sprain. He was just all over the injury report the entire season, and it was a down season, but he still put up 1,000 yards. And the reason that I'm going to pop up his game log, wide receiver 13 in his rookie season, there's no Tyreek Hill there. Best season yet in 2022. Wide receiver 8 with Tyreek Hill there. I just want people to see that and realize he is so capable of being a wide receiver 1, even with Tyreek Hill on the team. So he's been wide receiver 15 in points per game, wide receiver 12 in points per game, and wide receiver 21 in points per game. Yet he's being drafted as the wide receiver 21. Like he's going to repeat his down season. I'm all over Jaylen Waddle, and you should be too. Now let's get into my absolute favorite bounce back candidate of 2024, Chris Godwin. All right, and let's start out with the number one reason why. The Bucs offensive coordinator Dave Canales is gone and in Carolina. Now Liam Cohen is the new offensive coordinator for the Buccaneers, and he has come out and said Chris Godwin will be playing way more in the slot in 2024. Why is that important, you might ask? His slot rate by season 2023 was only 32%. And each of the past 4 seasons, it was above 50%. And let's take a look at his past 4 seasons. Wide receiver 2, wide receiver 31, wide receiver 16, wide receiver 19, wide receiver 29. In terms of points per game, though, and this is my favorite one, number 2 in points per game, 15 in points per game, 7, 15, and 34 last season. And that's exactly where he's being drafted this year, as if he's going to repeat his season from the slot. Now, the fact that Chris Godwin had 2 receiving touchdowns last season is like, I don't even know how to describe. Like, there's literally no chance that something like that happens again. He literally only had a 2% less target share than Mike Evans had last season. Holy shit, you know what I forgot to mention? Liam Cohen is the offensive coordinator for the Bucs. He was the offensive coordinator for Cooper Kupp in his 2021 season from the slot, in the best season we've ever seen from a wide receiver. So he's never been worse than wide receiver 20 overall or in points per game through 4 seasons with a 65% snap rate from the slot. This dude is coming for everyone. My next guy is Cooper Kupp. Now, he's being drafted outside the top 20 wide receivers. So don't worry, I did the math for you. Puka Nacua, actually, Ian Hardage did the math for you. Puka Nacua, 100 targets. Cooper Kupp, 99 targets in the 12 full games that they played together. Now, obviously, Puka is going off the board, wide receiver 8, and Cooper Kupp is outside the top 20. So Kupp returned from injury in week 5 and finished as the wide receiver 19 in total fantasy points, which is more fantasy points per game in through 17 than Devontae Adams and Chris Olave, who are being drafted way ahead of him. Now this brings me to a really crazy point. I don't just try to bear with me here before you call me an idiot. I want to know what the drastic difference is between Devontae Adams and Cooper Kupp. Now, I'm not saying draft Cooper Kupp over Devontae Adams. Cooper Kupp goes multiple rounds after him because Adams is wide receiver 10. Cooper Kupp is wide receiver 22. So you don't need to do that, and I wouldn't rank him ahead of him. I don't think there's a huge difference, though, because I think the only reason Cooper Kupp is down this low is because he can't stay healthy. He hasn't stayed healthy since 2021. But, let's look at this. Who has the better quarterback between Adams and Kupp? Kupp by far. Better situation in the higher scoring offense, both Cooper Kupp. Younger Cooper Kupp, actually, by, half a year. Higher ceiling is absolutely Cooper Kupp. We saw it in 2021. We saw number 1 in fantasy points per game in 2022. And we saw some solid weeks last season because of Matt Stafford. He's a dog. I mean, Adams only averaged 6 more yards per game, only 1 more reception per game, and only 2 fantasy points per game more. Damn, is this not going to load? Top 12 finishes last season. Devontae Adams had 4 total, and Cooper Kupp had 4 in total game. 4 in 12 total games. So here are some of the guys that go around Cooper Kupp. He's going at about 42 overall. He goes a pick before Trey McBride. He goes a pick after C.J. Stroud. Well, let's focus on receivers. Guys that go before him: rookie Malik Neighbors, Jaylen Waddle. Absolutely agree with that. Michael Pittman, not much of a ceiling. Deebo Samuel, DJ Moore, Stephon Diggs, Mike Evans. I would say outside of Mike Evans, everyone I just named ahead of him has huge question marks as well. This take is entirely based upon, dude, he's got to stay healthy. But if he stays healthy, what is stopping him and Puka from being completely even? They could both literally be wide receiver 1s if Stafford is healthy as well. I mean, Stafford 2 years ago threw for 4,800 yards and 41 touchdowns. Was injured in 2022, and last season was he missed a couple of games, but if you put into perspective what that was on pace for, Stafford would have been second in the NFL in passing yards. So just something to think about. My last guy is Najee Harris, and my opinion on this one is strong. Everyone hates Najee, so you know what? Just hate him all you want. I'll just be scooping him up in every single league. So Najee Harris in the last 3 seasons, he was the RB6 in fantasy points per game, RB19 in fantasy points per game, and RB30 last year in points per game in a down year. Sleeper decides not to load right now. My Wi-Fi is shitty. But off the top of my head, he was RB7, RB14, and RB23. I'll pop it up when I edit this video. I'm correct, aren't I? I think I'm correct. He's had 1,200 total yards and 8 total touchdowns, at least, in each of the past 3 seasons. He has not missed 1 game. This is one of the safest RB2 picks, especially if you're going to hero running back. Doesn't need to be your RB2. He's just one of the safest picks in fantasy football because he's being drafted at his floor. And I think a lot of people could agree on that. Although based on my comments, no, everyone hates him. They think Arthur Smith is the devil. So let's talk about Arthur Smith. There's this dumb, stupid, idiotic narrative that Arthur Smith ruins fantasy football players. Why? Because Bijan Robinson was supposed to be RB2, stupidly projected by the fantasy community. They got too excited in rookie in year 1. Just because he was an RB2, everyone's pissed. Arthur Smith sucks. He ruined Bijan. Bijan was still a top 10 running back. RB2, that is, you got to be the best player in fantasy football to get that. Now, the reason I think it's going to be great for Najee, let's take a look at his stats. in 2 years as the Titans offensive coordinator, he was 10th in rushing attempts and second in rushing attempts. Obviously, with Derrick Henry being a top 10 running back in both those seasons, then he Falcons head coach rushing attempts. Last year, third. 29th one, his RB1 was Cordero Patterson. I would fucking hope you don't run like top of the league. 2022, like he ran the ball more than any team in the NFL, and his RB1 was Tyler Algier, which, don't get me wrong, dude's a really solid backup. He's pretty underrated. He had over 1,000 yards that season, but that's surprising, right? You run the ball more than anyone with. You can talk about him all you want. Jaylen Warren's the better back. He's more efficient. Blah, blah, blah. Jaylen Warren can be the better, more efficient back all he wants. But Najee Harris is the RB1 for fantasy football. He's the bruiser. He is the workhorse. He is the guy that's going to score all the touchdowns. Jaylen Warren only has 5 touchdowns in the past 2 seasons. Najee Harris wiped that over a 8-game span probably off the top of my head. This is going to be about a 20-minute video that's taken me about an hour to record because I keep having to restart from Wi-Fi. Now none of my shit's loading, but I'm going to pop up on the screen some stat I found. Najee Harris, missed tackles forced, top 5 in the past 2 years. He's good too. Don't forget that. But the Steelers were dead last in touchdowns last season with 31, 28th in points per game. Now they upgraded their offensive line with multiple picks. They upgraded their quarterback from Kenny Pickett to Russell Wilson. And obviously Arthur Smith at OC in my mind for Najee Harris in fantasy is an upgrade. There's no chance that this team is last in touchdowns again. There's just no way. Like it has to go up from there. Who's going to score? Najee Harris, not Jaylen Warren. And I mean, you see in the splits that I popped up earlier, Najee is more than capable of being a good receiving back as well. So for me, he's a very, very safe pick at his ADP, but I think he has a higher ceiling that people aren't recognizing, and he's going to have a great bounce back season. So to round it out, Jonathan Taylor, Jaylen Waddle, Chris Godwin, Cooper Kupp, and Najee Harris are going to have huge bounce back seasons. Let me know what you think in the comments. What other videos you want to see. Make sure to check out my giraffe guide. I'll post the link to all my other content, giraffe guide, all that stuff below. And hey, Jaylen Waddle, his over-under on Underdog is like 1,000 yards. I just told you that he had his worst season yet, injured every other fucking week, and he still hit 1,000 yards. Take the over, use code FORTUNE. And one more thing, comment down below if you want to join a free fantasy football league that I'm hosting with $100 in prizes. DM me, comment, just let me know. Thank you guys for watching.